Hi everyone, I'm Bob Paulinski, Master of Wine. Today I'm at a Costco in Concord, California, and I'm picking up every Kirkland wine that I can find. I'm going to taste through the entire range, and I'm going to report back to you on what are the absolute best values. I picked up a dozen different Kirkland wines, 9 reds, 3 whites. I didn't include any sparkling or box wines for the purpose of this video. The range of Kirkland wines that you find in your Costco may vary a bit versus what I'm going to be tasting here in this video. Wines come and go on a regular basis, so it's always changing and you never know what you're going to find. But what I'm going to taste are the 3 top wines within this video. Also, there is one standout that was absolutely fantastic. What I'm searching out is the top value within the entire range. And what I'm using as a point of comparison are the like-priced branded wines within that category as well. The remaining wines, those wines not tasted within this video, will be listed down in the description below. I'm going to break down the assortment into one of 5 different groups to give you an idea of the overall value of each one of the individual Kirkland wines. Within Costco, some of the Kirkland wines are available on a regular basis, others come and go. For this video, there are several wines that were not included in the previous Costco video that I did just a couple months ago. If you'd like to watch that video, at the end of this one, there'll be a link in the end screen. It'll take you to that video that was done a few months back. Also within that video, it'll provide some guidance in terms of how to decipher the numbers and the information that's on the signs within a Costco. This can be a benefit in not only shopping for wine, but really for most anything within Costco. Within the Kirkland wine range, the pricing goes anywhere from opening price point to ultra premium. Now, in my view, Costco does a great job with wine, not only with the Kirkland brand, but with their full assortment. I buy wine there often. I think it's great how they constantly have new things coming in. They cover the classic regions very well. They do a pretty good job with a lot of the up-and-coming areas as well. Now, within the Kirkland range, in my opinion, the strongest value statement is within that low to mid price range. As you get up to higher price points, I don't think the value is quite as good. The wines can be solid, but I think when you're compared to their competitive counterparts, oftentimes the value statement starts to diminish. And that held true again in this particular tasting. And when you think about it, it really does make sense. If you're from a prestige area and you're a winery that has a strong reputation, there's good demand for your wines, you have limited volume capacity, you're going to be selling everything you produce under your own label. You may be happy to be selling within Costco, but you may not have a lot of interest in having your wines bottled under a Kirkland label. That said, the range that I tasted through for this video was really very solid. Overall, quite impressive. The prices quoted within this video are for the state of California. Now, Costco's footprint extends to many other places around the world. They're certainly all around the US. Prices are going to vary by market, but this will give you some indication of where the cost falls. First wine to be tasted is the 2020 Kirkland Bordeaux Superior. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw this in my Costco, I did a double take. There was an entire pallet of it sitting on the floor with a price tag of $6.99. That is insanely cheap for this sort of wine. Now, the name may give you some indication, say, hey, this is some elevated version of Bordeaux. Well, that's absolutely not the case here. Bordeaux Superior is simply a tick above the base level of Bordeaux. This is really intended to be everyday table wine. The wine is made from 60% Cabernet Sauvignon, 40% Merlot. It does spend a year in oak. I would imagine because the cost of the wine is so low, the oak is older wood. But this is base level Bordeaux. Now, in terms of the appearance of the wine, it does have some good depth of color. It's not opaque by any stretch, but there's good color density. There's a bit of fade out at the rim of the glass. The color is a bit purpley, which indicates a youthful wine, which it certainly is. It had very little aromatics when I first opened it. The first half hour or so, it just was not getting much off of this wine. What I ended up doing was taking 2 glasses and just took the wine back and forth about a half a dozen times. It aerated it. It really brought out the aromatics. I think part of it is this wine is very youthful. The other option would be just put the wine in a decanter and give it a bit of a swirl, and you're going to get the aroma out of it. The aromatics themselves, it has some nice red fruit character. It has that red fruit, there's a bit of cassis, there's a mild herbal note, which actually I find quite appealing. It does not have much of the pyrazine or that capsicum bell pepper character. That's very minimal in this wine. That's an indicator that there was some care taken during harvest and the fruit was actually quite ripe, which is always going to be a good indicator. On the palate, it's certainly not a big, dense wine, but it's very well made. Good presence on the front palate, mid palate, perhaps falls off a bit on the back, but it's really quite solid. Everything's in balance, a very good effort. You can tell that the fruit quality in this wine is quite sound. Now, you may say to yourself, okay, you look at the label and it'll say Bordeaux Superior Grand Vin de Bordeaux. Well, it's got some big bling bling wow factor. Well, it's absolutely not the case. That term Grand Vin de Bordeaux is window dressing. It's a little marketing speak. It means nothing. This is good level, base level Bordeaux. Now, the image of Bordeaux, certainly with the iconic producers, those classified growths, those that are getting all the big dollar in today's market, that is what's driving the image of Bordeaux. The reality of it is the vast majority of producers there are small, they're very modest, they're having a very difficult time finding a place in today's market. And so much so that recently the French government has offered significant incentives to pull up vineyards. And we're talking vineyards that are really at this sort of level, the Bordeaux Superior level. And the whole effort is to get the supply and demand much more in balance. My feeling is that's probably one of the reasons why this wine is such an incredible value. If you're a fan of Bordeaux at this more entry price point level, this is a fantastic wine. I would say pick up a case of this. You can keep it for a year or so. The wine will maintain itself just fine. It's a solid effort. Really a good bottle of wine. The second wine is a 2018 Kirkland Rioja Reserva. This one goes for $7.99. The wine spends 30 months in oak and an additional 6 months in bottle prior to being released. You can see the color of this wine is much different than the previous wine. The core has a nice reddish hue. There's quite a bit of fade as you get out to the rim of the glass. Part of that fade is going to be attributed to 2.5 years in oak. That much time in oak barrel lends a soft oxidative character to the wine. Some of the color compounds will fall out. On the palate, the wine will have that roundness, that soft character to it, and it will not have an overt fruit character. So a lot of that primary fruit has been lost. Aromatics, good intensity, has that red fruit. There's some subtle oak character. When I first opened this wine, it did not have much aromatics, much like the first wine. I did the same trick of having 2 glasses, just work the wine back and forth about a half a dozen times. That aeration helped to bring out much of the aromatics. You can do that or just simply put the wine in a decanter and give it a good swirl and you'll get more of that aromatic intensity out of it. On the palate, it has that polished, refined character. It's smooth, very soft, kind of an elegant style wine. It's not this overt in your face. There's good balance. There's subtlety to it. Very well made. I would not say this is a sensational version of Reserva. I think a lot better Reservas can be found out there from Rioja. But for the money, for this being $7.99, it's a very good value. It has the structure that I believe it would age well for a few years with no problem. But if you can find this in your Costco, it's well worth searching out. This is a very solid bottle. The third and final wine is the 2020 Kirkland Zigandos. This wine goes for $13.99, and in my opinion, this is the rock star performer of the entire tasting. Absolutely love this wine. It's made from primarily Grenache with about 85%, with the rest being Syrah and Mourvedre, the classic Southern Rhone blend. The color on this wine is moderate in depth, but the color has good extension to the rim of the glass. Keep in mind, this is primarily Grenache, so the wine is not going to have a huge depth of color to it, but there's good density. The color is quite purplish, which again is an indicator of youth. With this being a 2020, obviously it does not have much mileage to it. In terms of the aromatics, good intensity, red fruit, a little of that cracked pepper character. It has this savory spice note, a bit of a coffee note to it. Again, these aromatics did not just pop from the glass immediately. Because the wine is so youthful, it needed a bit of time. This was the third wine that I really worked back and forth with a few glasses, and it helped to bring out those aromatics. But it has good intensity, good presence. It has all the telltale signs that you would expect from a solid Southern Rhone red. Good weight. It has this presence to it. There's volume on this wine. Good front, mid, back palate. It's actually rather soft. It's quite accessible. It has structure where I believe this wine could age nicely for a few years, but it's drinking very well at the present time. Now, if I compare this to what's going on with Zigandos in the broad market, in recent years, there's been a lot more interest in Zigandos, and rightly so. It's one of those areas in the Southern Rhone that has long been a very solid performer. In terms of finding good domain bottlings from that area, you're not going to find it for this price, for this $13.99 price. But I will say, this is not what I would say is equivalent to the top domains, but this is a very good example of what the Southern Rhone can do. This can hold its own against a lot of other wines from that region. In terms of value for the money, rock solid start to finish. Really love this wine. For me, this was the standout of the entire tasting. Of the 12 wines that I tried, in terms of value for the money, I believe this one very much shines. If you can find this in your Costco, absolutely pick it up. It's a good example of what Zigandos should be. It's just a fantastic value for the money, a beautiful wine. Well, as it turned out, all three wines that were tasted in this video were reds. That was through no plan. These were the three that came up in the top in terms of my tasting. As I mentioned, there's going to be more detail down in the description on each of the wines that I tasted. Hey, all three of these are very different from one another. I think they're good, solid examples of what they're supposed to be. I'm going to be drinking more of the Zigandos than anything tonight. I absolutely love this wine. Love Southern Rhone. Zigandos is right at the top of my list. I'm having some beef stew tonight, and it's a cold night here, and this type of wine with that food just is a wonderful pair. I thank you so much for staying to the end of the video. If you have any comments, any finds from Costco that you want to post down in the comments section, please do. I try to follow up on each and every one of those. I thank you so much for all the support you've given to this channel. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. And until next time, cheers.